All right, guys, I've got 10 a.m. Looks like we've got 4 people in class with us today. Again, today's just review for anything you guys want to talk about. Before I get started and before you might have any questions, I wanted to show you guys something. I went in and after Monday's meeting, I went ahead and made those practice questions that I was showing you a little bit on Monday available for this class. So you can actually go into Connect. And there's actually 2 of them. One of them is just practice problems where you have like, there's an income, there's the financial statements. There's one on the accounting equation, and then there's one on the debit and credit and the T account analysis. The ones I've been showing you, you now have those. You can practice those. There's no penalty for trying them. They're just practice. And so you've got those. And then I also went ahead and added some more practice true, false, and multiple choice questions in Connect as well. So let me show you. I'm going to share my screen in a second. Let me show everybody where those are. And so again, I just shared my screen. And so the only way you can access these is through Connect. I did not link them to the Blackboard gradebook on purpose because I don't want you going in and then thinking that these points should show up in Blackboard. It's just only in Connect. But when you do log into Connect, and again, let me click on the student view. This is what you would all see. These practice questions would be right below the Chapter 13 homework and Chapter 13 quiz. So what I'm referring to is these 2 right here. One of them says, again, it says exam 1 practice questions. And I believe there's 50 of them. And all you have to do is click this link and you can attempt these as many times as you want. Again, no penalty. It's just maybe a tune-up before you take the test if you want it. And then here are the practice problems. And again, there's no due date, but you should be able to access both of these as well. All right. And so again, let me get back to my instructor view. So again, any questions today? I mean, again, today is just this review. I'll take any questions on anything from chapters 1, 2, and 3. I can work problems. I try to answer questions as best I can. And again, we've got 4 people in the class with us today. Remember, you have until Sunday to submit your exam. I think I just checked with in Connect. I think only 1 person in the whole class has actually done it just yet. So I know I'm talking to pretty much everybody right now who has not yet taken the exam. So it looks like a couple people just bowed out, and that's fine. Maybe their internet went down. But I've got Christian and Antoine right now. And again, within 15 minutes, so whatever you guys want, questions on anything.
Yeah, I do, but I'll have to go look at it real fast.
No problem. I'm here. Antoine, are you okay? Do you have any issues or questions I can help you with? Let me open up these practice questions. Let me show you a couple of them. You notice that if you choose and you want to practice some of these questions, there's 50 of them. Do not worry about those point totals. I didn't reset. Again, these are just practice, so they're not worth any points. And it's not going to hurt anybody's grade. But,
how many questions are on the exam?
On the exam, I believe there's 40 questions, 40 multiple choice, and then there's 2 essay type of problems.
When you say essay, you mean like the T charts?
Yep. Let me show you something. So essay would be like this. So let me go. The other set of practice exam questions is right here, where it says exam practice problems.
Mm-hmm.
And those type, when I say essay problems, they would look something like this, where you would have to either enter the numbers into an accounting equation. You might have to do the same thing, but do it in the T account forms, where you'd have to simply enter the appropriate debit or the appropriate credit. Or you might have to do something like this one, where you'd simply have to, there'll be something in the problem where they'll say, prepare an income statement, prepare a statement of owner's equity or balance sheet. They may ask that as well. And that could be a problem. So again, when I say two problems, that's the nature of it. I call them essay problems because you actually have to click some arrows and you have to enter some amounts. It's not multiple choice, but it's pretty much set up for you. You just have to make sure you enter the stuff in there. And sometimes even if because the Connect grades it automatically, what I do is I'll go in and review it, review everybody's exam scores after they've submitted it, and just to make sure that you get the maximum number of points. And that's for everybody. So yeah, the exam is due Sunday. And so I probably won't have looked at everybody's exam before our meeting on Monday, but I will do it sometime that week and make sure everybody's scores are as accurate as possible.
All right.
All right, then you'll go second.
But yeah, so this problem right here, this is, let me go back to my page. So everybody has access to both the one that says exam 1 practice questions. Those are just true, false, multiple choice type of questions. And then where it says exam 1 practice problems, those are the problems that I just put up.
All right, so for the multiple choice questions on the exam, is it like definitions or is it like the true and false how it was on like the homework?
Well, let me show us a good question. And sometimes you might get a little bit of both, but let me show you a good portion of it. And I have a couple of I had some notes taken on these practice questions that you can all access. Let me show you just a couple of examples. And again, there's no true false on the test, but true false I think are good questions to practice because multiple choice questions are similar to true false, because if you think of multiple choice as a series of true false statements, and then you just have to pick either the most true or the most false. But some examples of, let me get this, let me see, I got a couple on here. So here is, yeah. So here might be an example of a multiple choice question. And you'll notice, and this question is all about the accounting equation. And so in this problem, they say, it says that the following are the only accounts of Jones Supply Company. They want you to supply the missing balance. This is supply. So you should know, for example, that of course supplies is an asset. So they give you cash. They don't give you the supplies number. They give you accounts payable, and they give you capital. Now, of course, down here, they're going to show you how to solve it. But what I would do, if I was taking this test and noting you've got 2 hours and it's open book, open note, I would also have some scrap paper. I would have some notes I would jot down as I'm working this. But my approach to this problem is I would write out the accounting equation like this. I'd say assets equals liabilities plus equity. So I got my accounting equation. I know that cash is an asset, so cash is 10,130, that's one asset. I know that accounts payable is a liability, that's what, 4,000. And I know that capital is equity, that's 11,080. So if I look at this equation, the one unknown, of course, is supplies, and that's an asset. So if you look at the equation right now, you got 4,000 plus 11,080. And the total on the right side, of course, that would be 15,080. That's your total liabilities and equity. Well, if my assets right now are 10,130, and the only other asset that I do not know is supplies, to be able to figure out the supplies number, which is, again, what they're doing in this problem, you would just have to subtract. Of course, you would take the 15,080, and you subtract out the 10,130, and then the plug number would be that 4,950. Now, that's just one example of a multiple choice problem where you have to do like calculations. You don't have to do calculations in every single multiple choice problem, but that's just an example of some of the stuff you might get. And so let me show you another one. Let me see. See if I can find one where you don't have to do a calculation. That's a calculation. Like, here's an example. You could get something like this as well. It says, when equipment is purchased on credit, and of course, they're wanting you to know, again, this could be an accounting equation, so you got equipment, which of course is an asset. Let me just kind of get my stylus, my mouse, switch back. So you've got equipment, which is an asset, and of course, on credit means accounts payable. So if you had a scenario like this, and of course you got to choose the best answer. In this case, when you buy equipment, of course, equipment increases. So you know assets are going to be increasing. And on credit means you're increasing your debt. So that's also going to be increasing. So that's why the first choice would be the best answer. So a good portion of the multiple choice questions will be you have to kind of apply the concept. You'll get a few that might be pretty simple where you just have to say like you might get like, what's the accounting equation, of course, and you know, you just have to choose the appropriate, you know, button that has that equation on.
When you say equipment increases, you mean the balance of equipment increases?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And sometimes they didn't put an amount on here, but let's say they did. Let's say you bought equipment. Let's say it's for $10,000. Let's just make up a number. So if I went to my accounting equation like this, I would essentially increase equipment by 10,000, which is an asset, and I would increase your liabilities by 10,000 as well. Sometimes it helps people to put numbers into the equation for it to kind of make sense to them. So in this problem, it's not really matter what the amount is. It's just the concept of how is it impacting the equation, okay? So a couple things here. So you should know, for example, that equipment is an asset, which is increasing. And then also when it says something, anytime you're buying something on credit, of course, that's got to be a liability, most likely accounts payable. And of course, that would also be increasing. So Antoine and Christian, so that's essentially some of the multiple choice. You'll get some of those. So this is why you've got these questions on here. You can practice these if it gives you some more confidence before you actually submit the first, you know, try to attempt that first exam.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of them on here. I get these questions from the test bank. It's the same source that I wrote your exam. So the way that the authors of these questions are the same person. So that's, and you, in fact, it's the same author that writes your quiz questions as well. So again, these are just practice, and you've got all these. So it might help anybody to practice these before you take or you submit the first exam. And you can take your time with these. You can take notes on them. I believe I've got it set so you get unlimited attempts. There's references where you can get assistance on them if you miss a question. And so this might help you, you know, maybe like a final tune-up before you actually take the exams, you know, take it and see how you do.
Can you go to a question that has credits and debits?
Let's see. I got a bunch of them on this one. Let's see. I mean, here's just a true false statement. I got some more of these, but it says, and this is just pertaining to credits. And it says credits, and let me get my arrow on. It says credits increase liabilities, owner's equity, and revenue. And of course, they're just saying, is that true or false? And so if you get a question like that, of course, there could be more choices depending on if it's multiple choice, is just go back and look at your rules for debits and credits. And of course, if you look at the liabilities, of course, increase with credits. I know that's true. Equity increases with credits, so I know that's true. And then revenue increases with credits as well, so I know that's true as well. So there could be some questions like that where you got to know what the debits and credits are. Here's another one. It says a debit has the same impact on expenses and liabilities. And of course, that would be false. And so if you get a question like that and you say, I just don't know why that's false, what I would do is I would write out the T account rules that I've given you. So I'd say, okay, what's the rule for expenses? So I draw my T account, I got my debit, and I got my credit. And the rule that I gave you was expenses increase with debits and decrease with credits. And of course, for liabilities, I draw a T account. Again, you got your debit and your credit. And the rule is your liabilities decrease with debits and increase with credits. So if I just compare these two right there, just on the basic rules of how they increase and decrease, a debit to an expense means increase.
And then
Go ahead.
it decreases because a liability is something you have to pay back, and that would be credit, right?
Well, it's not really, that's just how they set up the rules. I mean, if you go back and study the accounting equation, the real reason behind all this, if I write out, like if I were to say, okay, you've got your assets, T account equals your liabilities plus your equity. And again, I would just write out my T account. And of course, the rules that I gave everyone, that was that first day I gave the debit credit rules. I'll just write these out again. Remember, you got plus, minus on the asset side. When you go to the right side of the equation, you go minus, plus. And then when you go to equity, it's also minus, plus. Now, within equity, remember, there's 4 types of transactions. And this one specifically is just asking about expenses. And the rule with expenses, again, is they increase with debits and decrease with credits. So the idea behind that is that even though you're debiting an expense, you're in effect, because it's part of equity, you're actually impacting the overall of the debit side of equity, okay? And so that's I mean, to go back to your question, that's the reason why, is because expenses are debited, but in effect, it's like you're increasing the negative part of equity, because remember, expenses reduce equity, okay? And that's just the best answer I can give you in terms of just the why they set it up like that. But the nice thing is you can have you can have all these notes during the exam, and so if you ever get confused or have a question, you can refer to your notes and say, okay, here's the rule: expenses increase with debits, liabilities increase with credits. So a debit to an expense and a debit to a liability mean different things. Even though universally, if you look at a T account, debit does mean left and credit does mean right. That's the only thing that's universally true for debits and credits for everything. In terms of, again, the increase decrease rule, a debit to an asset means increase, a debit to a liability means decrease. And in this problem, they're focusing on debits and how they affect both expenses and liabilities, okay? So the way a debit affects an expense is a debit would be increasing the expense. The way a debit would affect a liability, the rule says it would be decreasing the liability. So that's why the statement would be false. Does that help a little bit? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so those are just some true false. I think I've got, I'm just going through all these. I don't want to just give you guys all the answers before you try it. I got a bunch of, like, here's one. It's not hard. It just says, for example, when equipment is purchased for cash, the cash account is credited and the something account is debited. So here's a way a multiple choice question could ask it, and it's a debit and credit question. And this one, you just have to figure out which account is debited. And of course, it would be equipment would be your answer, because if you credited cash, you have to debit something else. It wouldn't make sense to debit any of these 3 because it clearly says you're buying equipment, okay? So once again, you'll get some of these. These are like some of the transactions we looked at. You could get that in a multiple choice question where they'll leave out a couple blanks and you just have to fill in the blank. And I think, like, here's another one. So it says select the entry below to record the receipt of a previously owed cash from a customer. So you're receiving cash that is owed to you from a customer. Of course, that would be accounts receivable. So you'd have to look at the choices, and you should be looking for a cash. I see cash is in A, B, and D. And then I'm also looking for accounts receivable. Of course, the only 2 that have accounts receivable in it is C and D. So just looking at the choices, it's got to be letter D, or the regular choice number 4. But clearly, if you're receiving cash, you're going to be increasing cash, which should be a debit. So that should make sense. And then, of course, you have to credit something to offset that. The credit would, of course, go to accounts receivable. Now, even as you go through problems like this, sometimes you can just look at some of the choices and rule them out. Say, like, for example, if you look at choice A, where it says debit cash and credit salaries expense, we've never done that ever in class. So there's no way that that could be a correct answer. Even if you didn't quite know what the debit or credit, if you go back and study what we've been doing, we've never credited salaries expense just yet. We'll do that in chapter 7. We'll see what we need to do with that. But you look at the second part where it says debit salaries expense and credit cash. Some people might say, well, that's a possibility because we should be, well, maybe because it says we're receiving cash. But remember, a credit to cash means reduce, not increase. So that right there would rule out that one. And then, of course, on part C, you've got to have cash involved, and they don't have cash in any of these. So if you look at the choices, sometimes you can just go back and study some of these, look at the incorrect answers, and ask yourself, why is that not correct? And I think sometimes that's a good way to study. That's, in large part, when I was studying for the CPA exam, that's how I did it, is when I would practice questions and I would miss questions. And by the way, everybody misses a bunch when you're studying for that exam. That's how you learn. And sometimes I actually learn more from the questions that I missed than the questions that I got correct. Because when I missed a question, I try to figure out what did I miss, and then I go back and study the different choices, and I would actually make up note cards just on some of the incorrect choices and just try to figure out what exactly how did I read it incorrectly, and what was I not seeing. And then I got to a point where it was, I could breeze through the problems real quickly, and I could see the trick, and I could learn the concept that way. But that's how I did it, and that's how I, essentially that's how I learned. That's why I think sometimes it's good to try some questions and miss them, and then that kind of shows you what you don't know. But yeah, so this is the type of questions you can get on the debits and credits as well. All right, was there any other issues, questions, or anything that you guys would like me to look at? Looks like, I think at this point, since it's like 10:22, and I think based on after Monday, I think a lot of people think they're just going to be studying and they're going to take it either today or whatever. I think it's just you guys. So this is almost kind of like a personal tutoring session or whatever. So let me know. We've got another 28 minutes. So let me know if there's anything I can do. Be glad to go over anything for you guys and look anything up, answer any questions right now. You guys pretty much have a free office hour right now. It looks like, 'cause I don't think anybody else is going to join us today.
Yeah, can you go over one of the two on the test that we will have besides the multiple choice?
Okay, so you want to look at one of those like the problems? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, so if I pull up the practice problems, and I would focus, the one on the accounting equation, I think this is a good problem just to go back and review the accounting equation. But specifically on the exam, you'll have to apply this accounting equation more likely than multiple choice. In terms of like the problem, it'll be more like something like this, where they'll give you the T accounts, you'll go through the transactions, and then you just have to write the appropriate debit or credit. So for example, my stylus on. So where letter A says invested $156,000 in cash to start the business, you would then have to determine what accounts are affected, the type of transaction, and of course get the right debit and credit. So we all know hopefully at this point that when you're putting cash into the business, you're increasing it. And so we would go to the cash account, and of course these are all the answers, so I'm not going to do all of them because this whole problem, as you practice, might actually take you half an hour. But notice you would put a debit there. There's 156,000 debit, and then you have to have a credit somewhere else to offset that. And so what you do is you look for the capital account, and so there it is, right here. And then of course you would enter the appropriate credit of 156,000. So again, and then you would actually be typing these into the T account. You have a cell just like this. You just enter it. You either enter a debit or you enter a credit, and I believe the balances will calculate for you automatically, like this one did. But that would be like what the problem would be. The transactions are the same. like on the second one, where it says you paid the rent, 5,600. Paid meaning, of course, you paid cash. You paid the rent. And of course, you've got cash, which is an asset. It's reduced. It should be credited. So you go down to the cash account. You say credit cash. There it is, 5,600. And then you have to debit something else. So the debit would go to rent expense. So then you'd look for the T account, which in this case, there it is. It's rent expense. And of course, you would then debit the rent expense, and that's all you got to do. So the point is you're going to get transactions very similar, if not identical to this, because of course this is a test. Actually, this problem is a test problem, but you would get questions just like this, and of course you'd have to put the right debit or credit. So that would be, for example, one problem that would be worth 10 points. The other type of problem that, since you're asking, that you would get would be something on the lines of where you would have the T accounts already prepared for you. You would already have the balances of all the accounts. Like in this one, they've already given you, they give you a cash balance and accounts receivable balance and so forth. All you'd have to do is take it to the next step and prepare the financial statements. So like on this one, they want you to, number one, do a trial balance. Now, of course, they give you all these transactions up at the top. They've already done those for you. You just have to do, you'd get a problem where you would just have to prepare a trial balance, income statement, equity balance sheet, and they would give you these little tabs where you'd click the tab. You'd have to click the whatever drop down arrow you're going to click, and you don't have to put them in this exact order, by the way. There's a trial balance is not a financial statement. It just says do debits equal credit. So you just have to pick all the accounts, and then of course enter the appropriate balance, whether it's a debit or credit. Make sure your debits equal your credits, and then after that, you would then go and you'd have to again enter your revenues, enter all your expenses, and make sure you get your net income. And I do believe they'll make you calculate those, because I don't think it's assumed that you're just going to let the system say revenues minus expenses, but depending on how they get the formula, but you should know it's revenues minus your expenses to get net income. So you'd have to do that. And then you'd have to go in and do the equity statement, which is the next one. That's
I don't know if it's just me, but I couldn't hear you for like the last 10 to 15 seconds.
I'm sorry. Am I coming okay now? Can everybody hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
No, sir. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
Well, there may be it could just be an internet connection or something. Again, I apologize about that. Christian, I believe your question was, again, the two problems.
I heard two problems.
Yeah, well, the exam, I'm showing you right now when I'm sharing my screen, I'm showing you what one of the problems might actually look like. Am I hearing me now a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm hearing you a little better.
Okay, cool. Does that help? I mean, you would have to do something like this, where you'd have to enter a trial balance. You would prepare an income statement, equity statement, and balance sheet. And you would have to click like drop down arrows to select the account names, and of course, enter the appropriate amounts. So that would be like an example of the type of problem you'd have to do on the exam.
All right.
Now, that also brings up another thing I'll just share. So, and this is again for everyone, you get 2 hours to take this test. And so you've got 40 multiple choice and 2 problems, kind of like what I just showed you. And so plan your time, have a strategy. So you might say, I'll spend 50 minutes doing the multiple choice, and then I'll allocate the rest of the time on just working on the problems or something like that. Now, I don't know that it's going to take everybody 50 minutes to enter the answers for the multiple choice. It might only take you half an hour. I don't know. I know 2 hours is enough time, but just make sure you watch your time a little bit. Make sure that you pick a time of a day that you've got the 2 hours to work, up to 2 hours to work it. I would not wait until Sunday night at 10 o'clock to try to take it, because once you get to 11:59, I believe you're going to get timed out anyway, because that's the due date's 11:59 on Sunday. Okay. But, you know, pick a time to take it. And just remember that if you run into technical issues, if Connect goes down or your internet goes down and you get logged out and whatever, just email me, let me know, and I'll go in and take a look at it, and I can always reset it for you. So don't think that that's going to hurt you. It shouldn't. So you just have to let me know if there's an issue with any sort of technical issues on that. Okay.
All right.
All right. Anything else you guys have on your mind? Anything else you would like me to put up?
I'm good now.
Kristen,
Just
good?
need to go do the practice test.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's for everybody. I didn't want to, I put up a couple of these practice questions just to show you that they're out there, and I don't want to just put them all up, because I think the best way to learn these is to just try them on your own and then come back and then take some notes and you can keep redoing them. But lots of times when you miss a question, go back and focus on, well, what's the correct answer? And then try to study, why is that the correct answer? And even after today's session, if you come across a couple of them and you're not quite sure why it's the correct answer, just email me, and then I can draw up a couple notes and send them to your email and give you some help that way too. So even though today's Wednesday, you know, let's say you practice some of those practice questions later tonight even, and there's a couple of them that you just don't know why, whatever way the answer is going, you don't get it. Just send me an email, and I'll try to draw something up to give you a better explanation, and then send that to your email. Now, of course, I don't do that for the test. I mean, of course, once you start the exam, you know, I don't answer questions about the test, of course, but anything on the practice questions, on the homework, and so forth, all that's fair game. Anybody can ask. I'll try to answer it as best I can on those. Okay. All right. Was there anything else? We got Veronica. Anything else from anybody? I didn't know that there'd be that many people in here today, just because I know a lot of people are just studying, and today is just review. I'm just taking whatever questions anybody has that needs help. That's really what today is. This is, of course, this is the last day I'm giving for that type of thing, because next week, remember, next week we are going to be starting chapter 4. And so just to kind of give you three a heads up, let's say you take the exam today or tomorrow, and you're thinking, okay, so I'm done for the week, and that's fine. You might have other exams and other stuff going on. But one thing you might want to do is, looking ahead to next week, is to go into Blackboard and go into the chapter 4 learning module and maybe play the lecture video. It's only about 25 minute lecture video. Play that, and that'll give you an idea of what we're going to be getting into next week, and that might kind of give you a jump start on next week's information. It might actually help you a little bit better as we go forward. You know, the hard thing about taking, I think, any class the first week, you know, the fact that this is live virtual lecture, and you know, typically that we would be in person, is that sometimes you're not quite sure about the textbook or the instructor in terms of their philosophy and how they teach it. But hopefully you're seeing with me at least that you have all these resources where it actually would help, I think, everybody if you actually got ahead of me before the class even begins, just to maybe review the video. And that would give you kind of a heads up in terms of just some prereqs in terms of what we're going to be studying. You'd be surprised sometimes that actually helps your learning when I actually cover the concept during our sessions. So that's just kind of something, if you know, just if you get this exam done and you got some extra time, you may want to go ahead and just jump ahead and see what's in chapter 4, and that might help you going forward even after the exam.
Well, if we have no more questions, are we good to go, or do you want
Yeah.
to?
It's up to you. I'm just here to help if you feel like, man, I think I got this. I know we got about 16 minutes left on recording. If you're feeling good, yeah, like I said, everybody's attendance is okay this week. I'm not, you know, I gave everybody, this is a study week. I mean, there could be people taking the exam right now. So yeah, if you're good to go, have a good one. That's fine. I'm I'll stay on as long as I need up to the 10:50 to answer questions or to help anybody that needs any help.
All right, thank you.
All right, see you, Chris.
See ya.
Thanks.
Are you leaving? Okay, Antoine, you good?
I'm gonna practice on Connect, and then I'll email if I still need any help.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Antoine. All right. See you later.
All right.
All right.